women are getting all the top grades, they're driven, they want to contribute to the economy. And if you don't bring in the talents of the women,
Mhm.
the economy cannot thrive.
Indra, thank you so much for joining us. It's such a pleasure and an honor to be speaking to you today.
Honest to be speaking with you too, Ambika. I grew up with Femina, and to me, in those days, it was an aspirational magazine. And I can see you've maintained the quality, so I'm just thrilled to be in it.
Thank you. And I know I've told you this before, but you've been on my wish list to interview and have on the cover for a very, very long time. So this is
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Um,
Thank you.
Indra, I read your book from cover to cover. Um,
Mm.
and I just wanted to start with why did this feel like the right time to reveal your story in full?
So it was an interesting evolution because I didn't start to write a book at all.
Mhm.
I was going to write about, how to lift women in the workplace, how to provide support systems so they can have a family and work. Um, how do you give women the power of the purse? Those kinds of issues, because those are the questions that people asked me as I was in PepsiCo and leaving PepsiCo.
Mhm.
So I was going to write a series of articles about that and sort of get a policy discussion started.
Mhm.
And my publisher, several publishers, and my book lawyer came to see me and said, look, if you want to write about those issues, that's great. But there's credibility and readability only if you inform it through your life.
Mhm.
People want to know about your life. People want to know how you managed it. They want to know if there's a manual for doing all this, and maybe your manual they can use. So you've got to inform it with your life story.
Mhm.
So what ended up as a result was not a memoir per se, not a tell-all per se. It's a book filled with lessons informed by my story.
Mhm.
And so it's not intended to just tell you, here's my story. It's to tell you what I went through, what I took from each of the stages of my life, and what I intend to do for the next phase of my life.
Having read it, family is also obviously a very, very huge part
Mm.
of your life and your story. Is it safe to say that your grandfather has been one of your biggest teachers? And if so, could you talk a little bit about how he had such a profound impact on you?
My grandfather, my tata, my
Yeah,
paternal
Tata.
grandfather,
Yes,
was
absolutely.
just, if I think of him now, I get emotional. I think as kids growing up, he was the most central figure.
Mhm.
He was the head of the household, and he ruled over it with a firm hand and a big heart.
Mhm.
He adored the grandkids. He adored the three of us, my sister, my brother, and I. He adored us. He devoted his life to the three of us.
Mhm.
Absolutely devoted his life. Our success was his happiness. He made sure that we were supported at home in terms of any help we needed in schoolwork.
Mhm.
He made sure, along with my father and my mother, but the men in our family said the girls cannot be treated any differently than we would the boys. We
Mhm.
have to let them fly, we have to let them dream, whatever they want to do. He pushed us to be more than what we would have been had he not pushed us.
Mhm.
He'd give us lessons all the time. Satan has work for idle hands. Why are you just sitting simply staring into space? Read a book,
Mhm.
do something. He would push us to read stuff not related to schoolwork, so we would expand our thinking.
Mhm.
He'd make me read the newspaper to him, not because he couldn't read it, because he wanted me to get in the habit of reading a newspaper article and understanding what it said. So it was always a life dedicated to the kids. And what it really meant for me is there is a multi-generational living if executed right,
Mhm.
where generations help each other. That could be fantastic for the grandkids because parents are always busy. My mother, had she been solely responsible for us girls growing up,
Mhm.
would have had a tough time because she has so many other things to do. But having my grandfather as the single dedicated source for us
Mhm.
with no other worries was just fantastic. And
Wonderful.
I won the lottery of life with my tata.
Ah, I resonate a lot with everything you've said as well, and that also segues to a couple of other questions I have for you. I think
Mm-hmm.
they can all be united by the one phrase that you have said in the book and before, which is family is the foundation and the force that has propelled you. And I think I can see why now. You've also said that your mother would have made a great CEO. How are you your mother's daughter?
In so many ways, I'm my mother's daughter. In some ways, I'm not. Let me talk about both. Mom
Okay.
was brilliant. Mom is brilliant. She's still, at her age, still writing and doing amazing research on topics that people read what she writes and they're amazed that she has such a brain.
Mhm.
She knows how to organize herself. She knows how to give orders. She knows how to extract work from people. She's just remarkable.
Mhm.
She's a tough boss. Okay, she's a tough boss. She doesn't give compliments easily at all, except to the grandkids. To her kids, no compliments. That didn't enter into her vocabulary at all. But she wasn't allowed to go to college because her family could not afford to send her to college. Had she gone to college, and if the times had been different, she would have risen because she just works until it gets done. And if you want to talk about a whirling dervish, she never sits still for 1 minute.
Mm.
Never, ever. She has to keep doing something all the time. I am that way. I have to be reading or doing something all the time because I feel like there's only
Yes.
so many hours in our life that we're given,
Mhm.
before we depart. And I want to maximize how I use those hours in my life.
Yeah.
Now, I will tell you the bad thing is that I'm always in action. And sometimes my kids will always say, Mom, just chill. Don't do anything for a week. I don't know what it is not to do anything for a week. I just
Mm.
don't know. And even if we talk about going for vacation, my mother would say, You're going for a whole week? Don't you think that's too much? It's like, are you going to relax for a whole week? Why don't you do some more work? And so even today, um, my mother is a very different person in terms of how she's busy and how she wants us to be pushing our brain, thinking, reading, learning.
Mhm.
It's really, I am in many ways my mother's daughter that way.
Um, are there times that you wish that you were wired differently? I mean, old habits must die hard, I assume. Do you still wake up at 4:30 a.m.?
I mean, this morning I was up at 4. It's remember, it's not something that I wake up because I'm troubled or I'm stressed out. I just wake up because I feel like the sun's going to come up soon. Why not get a head start on it? I can read, I can
Mhm.
do so many things in the morning when there's a moment of stillness because everybody else in the family is sleeping. So I
Mhm.
get 2 hours to myself with my cup of South Indian coffee and looking out the windows and reading. And my God, it's such a beautiful moment. Um, and so I use the day fully.
Mhm.
And I wish I was wired differently at times, but in many ways, I think I may have been able to overcome so many of the challenges of everything I did over my life because I'm wired the way I am. Because there were multiple tracks in my head. One is a family track, one is a home track, one is an office track, one is
Mhm.
a kids track. Everything was somehow running in my brain, and it just worked out.
At a certain pivotal moment in your life, you found yourself between two giants, which is GE and PepsiCo. And a phone call from Mr. Calloway cemented your decision to join PepsiCo. Uh, what was it about that phone call that moved you?
This is a person who, in an interview with him,
Mhm.
spoke for a minute, and I spoke for 59. Because he was a very quiet person. He would ask one question and just sit back and
Mhm.
let you talk.
Yes.
And here is a person who calls you and speaks for 5, 10 minutes, straight in the most humble way.
Mhm.
Uh, and this again goes back to your previous question about culture and valuing people.
Mhm.
It was clear to me that he was valuing me. It was clear from the way he talked, the way he committed to developing me, told me the environment at PepsiCo needed somebody like me. Together, we could make this company greater. He was making me feel part of a bigger entity that together we were going to make even greater. And it's that outreach, that humble outreach, with an entreaty for me to be part of an ecosystem that I could help improve, that touched me beyond anything that I expected.
Mm. Can imagine.
The decision was simple.
But when you walked into PepsiCo, that fateful day, March 30th, 1994, I believe, and you felt that it suited your spirit. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the landscape, however, at the time did mirror the senior tier of corporate America.
Yep.
But here you were, a deeply engaged parent, wife, and a daughter, but also somebody who was deeply cognizant of being an outsider. How did you make sense and order in the following years at PepsiCo?
First, PepsiCo is an unusual company. You walk into the company, there's a special sauce in that company. It's youthful. Everybody is smiling. There's a joie de vivre in the company. I think it's the products and the campaigns that we do that evokes that sort of a feeling in the company. So you get caught up in that right away, first. Thing number two is when I joined PepsiCo, my immediate boss was Bob Detmer, who was the chief financial officer. Bob Detmer was a established leader in PepsiCo. He'd been there for a long time. People respected him enormously. And Bob Detmer made the company, in all the meetings that he was in, made it known that he was my mentor. He was going to look out for me. He was going to coach me, develop me. So people looked at me like, she's Detmer's hire, so let's give her the respect. And Wayne Calloway did the same thing. So now I had two bosses who were giving me all the respect, and they really knew I was going to break China and PepsiCo being so different. So they were explicitly signaling to the organization, we brought her in. And then a few months later, Roger Enrico came in, who was considered impossible to work with. And all of a sudden, he's saying, this is my person, don't mess with her. And people are going, man, she should be special. So again, you see, these people sort of provided that safety net for me to establish myself. And then once I established myself based on my work, then they could let go. But in the early days, between Detmer, Calloway, and Roger Enrico, it was a fort that they built around me and allowed me to grow and thrive and put my mark on the company. And then, of course, I was flying by myself.
Of course. When you did become CEO, though, how did you find ways to balance compassionate action and foresight with the absolute rigor that is required to make massive decisions that have very far-reaching consequences?
My belief is that people, your executives in particular, have to be engaged in the company, head, heart, and hands. Okay. Typically, people focus on the head, people focus on the hands. And I believe that increased loyalty to the company, to me, to the team, will happen if they felt emotionally committed to the company in significant ways. Emotion not derived from a paycheck, emotion derived because they believed in the company. They believed they were part of this company in more profound ways than I'm getting a paycheck. So I decided to engage their heart. I got to know them all as people. I got to know their families. I got to know their parents, started to write to parents, to the spouses. And I did that because I wanted their families to realize that their spouse or their child was part of a larger organization that had a profound impact on corporate America. And that I truly appreciated the hours that their family member was putting in PepsiCo. And just know your CEO is grateful. So when the family knew that the CEO was not just using their spouse or their child as another tool of the trade, but a genuine contributor, all of a sudden the relationship changed. And I think, in a way, we all have to put empathy back in the job.
Absolutely.
And look at each individual as somebody who has got family, who's got issues, who's got joys and sadness, and, allow them to bring themselves to work. And it is not inconceivable for me to be in a meeting and find that one employee is looking absolutely glum and unusually quiet and not giving eye contact. I'll call a break, pull that person out and say, okay, tell me what's up. And they'll say, you noticed? I said, yeah, I've noticed. Tell me what's up. And then they'll tell me what's going on. And I'll tell them, take a break. Just leave, go home, or work out your issues, and I'll brief you on what happened at the meeting. Because at the end of the day, they're people too. All of us are people.
Absolutely. I think that's a rare quality, to be honest. But I'm also interested to know that you always stood by the fact that to have an economy and a society that is progressive, we have to educate women.
Yeah.
We have to empower them, and we have to allow them to unlock their tremendous potential. I'm kind of linking this question to everything that we've been talking about. And
Yeah.
I'm curious to know if you feel that you've witnessed the needle move forward with this in any way.
Yes and no.
Mm.
I actually think from when I started to now, we've come a long way.
Okay.
The number of women in senior leadership positions has gone up. The number of women in colleges and universities and professional schools has gone up a lot.
Mhm.
So in all of those metrics, we're making great progress.
All right.
And people are now beginning to recognize and realize that women are getting all the top grades, they're driven, they want to contribute to the economy. And if you don't bring in the talents of the women,
Mhm.
the economy cannot thrive. At a
Absolutely.
time when right now the big issue is okay.
Mhm.
And so I think those ways we've come a long way. Where we have not made much progress
Mm.
is the environment inside companies for women to work without facing unconscious bias or lack of pay parity. We
Mhm.
still have too many headwinds on women as opposed to giving them the tailwinds to
Mm.
soar. And we have done nothing to build a support structure for them if they want to have a family too.
Absolutely.
I think the one thing COVID did is showed us what remote work could look like because the technology moves so fast.
True.
So COVID is the only silver lining of COVID. We now know how to do remote work.
Mm.
So women can now, young family builders, I shouldn't say just women, young family builders can now work the flexibility of days into the schedule.
Mm.
But we still haven't done much in terms of childcare. We've just said it's a problem. And in many, many families, the woman is still expected to come home and carry a full burden at home.
I see that.
And, we're talking about the educated parts of society. And because you well know, around the world, I think there are 137 million girls who are still not educated.
Mhm.
And, the reason they're not educated is because society believes that these women have to perform certain jobs that don't require education.
Mhm.
That's not true. Families are fragile. And when the family breaks up for whatever reason, what is that woman supposed to do with the kids? I don't know. And so I think we ought to think holistically about women and say we've got to give them the power of the purse. We've got to give them the ability to keep a job, support their families. And we've got to make women equal partners in this whole economic equation.
The rules of engagement have to change. They
They do.
absolutely have to. And like you
Yeah.
said, during COVID, I think a lot of companies could see that somebody could manage actually working an entire load, taking care of themselves,
Yeah.
taking care of the companies while being at home. Earlier, I feel that it was there was this preconceived notion that you had to kind of check in and check out into an office environment
Right.
to be of use to the company. And I
That's
think I
right.
do think that COVID has turned it on its head.
Yeah.
Hopefully the rules will continue to engage once the world gets back on its feet in its entirety. I hope so.
I think we can evolve new work styles, Ambika, that
I
suit
think.
families
Hmm.
and allow women and men, young family builders, to have a family and build, a career. I think what we have to do is to make sure that families are a source of strength, not a source of stress.
Mhm. How do you feel that women can mentor other women? What would you say is the most effective process now?
I think first, women should be willing to take feedback from other women. I
Absolutely.
think women prefer taking feedback from men than they do from women. I think step one, women should be willing to take feedback from other women.
Mhm.
And second is, women should learn to give feedback to other women in a constructive way. I think I've watched women, when you give feedback, they say things like, well, that's a bitchy thing to say, or I can't believe you said that.
Yeah.
No, never meant it in any negative way, except I actually believe that with these couple of changes, you could be unbeatable.
Mhm.
So, but you've got to be open to it, because if a guy tells you the same thing, you're willing to take it. So I think that we as women should talk amongst ourselves as to how the sisterhood can help each other.
Hmm. I'm very curious to also know, has there ever been having such great mentors and
Yeah.
people, your family included, Has there ever been a piece of advice given to you at any point during your life that you are now happy that you absolutely did not listen to?
I don't know if I'm happy I did not listen to, but I was told always, make sure you take time off, go on vacations, chill out, relax,
Yeah.
don't overwork yourself, from people who are friends.
Mhm.
And I never listened to them because I just didn't know what a vacation was. And even if I went on vacation, I'd take bags of mail or books to read because that's what I love to do on vacation, sit in a room and read.
Mm.
My husband loves to hike. So I say, you go hiking, I'll read. But then I can read at home. Why did I have to come to Italy or some other place to read? So this is the problem. So I don't know if it's advice that I'm glad I didn't take,
Mhm.
but it's advice I didn't know how to take. I didn't know how to take.
My parents used to pack us. We used to live in the northeast of India at the time, and everywhere that we had to go was through a very, very long road trip.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the trunk at that point was filled with books because that's
Yes.
the only way that they could keep us occupied, both during the road trip and understood.
And once I came into some resources, I went to London and bought every Enid Blyton and Richmond Crompton and Biggles and Billy Bunter, every book I grew up with.
Mhm.
I bought the entire sets and I've got it at home because the memories of giggling over Enid Blyton or Richmond Crompton or Billy Bunter was just fantastic.
Can understand. I'm getting towards the end here, sadly, but I just wanted to end off with a particular anecdote which stands out so hugely for so many different reasons, and that's about meeting both President Barack Obama and Dr. Manmohan Singh at the time, when Dr. Singh happened to say that she's one of us, and President Obama responded that you were one of them too.
Yeah.
It's that sort of duality that seems to have led you on such a learning curve as well. So, could you expound a little bit on the understanding that duality has imparted to your life?
First of all, that experience was surreal for me because President Obama was introducing his team and came to me and he said, Indra Nooyi, CEO of PepsiCo, and Prime Minister Singh just said, oh, but she's one of us. And Obama didn't blink. He just said, yeah, but she's one of us too. Let's be clear, she's from our team, kind of tone. But it was great to belong to the world's largest democracy and the oldest democracy. My foundation came from India, the family foundation, respect for elders, role of teachers, intergenerational responsibility, multi-generation living, all the things that were drilled into my head. The large family that didn't have much, but loved being together. Togetherness was everything. I never wanted a lot, never wanted a lot. That I think gave me a great start in life. But my wings were added on in the US. This was a seat of culture, innovation, the forward-thinking technologies, where women could thrive as much as men. And I have to tell you, Ambika, from where I came from and where I ended up in PepsiCo as a CEO, it could have happened only in the United States. Only in the United States. And I think we should not forget that. That this country was open for, the best and brightest to come and thrive. And it's a meritocracy to the extreme. At the margin, there might be issues, but everybody has issues. But at the core, this country is a fantastic country for people like me. And I'm always grateful for the start I got here and for the continued mentorship I had from people here that allowed me to be who I am now and give this chance for me to talk to you.
For everybody who's watching this, if they haven't already, read the book. Absolutely read the book, because there's just so much more to discuss. Would take an entire week. Indra, thank you so much for joining me for what has been an exceptional chat for me too. And I'm thrilled you're on our cover for October 2021. Thank you, Indra.
Thank you, Ambika. It was wonderful talking with you.
You too.